So you think we attract people based on our psychological wounds?
100%.
Wow. And as we start to heal and grow, if the other person's not healing and growing, we kind of pull away.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's interesting.
Oh, I can see the cogs moving in your
I
brain.
just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Speaking, I guess, about relationships and men and women, with all of your expertise on the brain, is the process of manifesting love and falling in love different from men versus women?
I think if it's love you're really looking for, then it's not different. But
Not lust.
yeah, so the issue is what you're actually looking for.
So you think men and women manifest love the same way, similar ways?
Yeah, I think if you want that sense of partnership and friendship and intimacy, and you want to be loyal and you want it to be for the long term, then it doesn't matter what gender you are. Mm-hmm. But if the disconnect is often, and this is a bit of a stereotype, but usually it's more that women want a loving, stable relationship, and men perhaps, don't want that as much.
Want sex or whatever, yeah.
Or just don't want it right now, but go through periods where that's what they want and go through periods where that's not what they want, which I guess could be true of any gender as well. But overall, more likely women will want to be in a monogamous relationship. And
why is that, based on kind of the brain science?
So it comes from evolution. So when we lived in the cave, women did need men to protect them from predators and to hunt for food. So women,
especially if they're pregnant too, and they weren't able to go out and hunt or gather or whatever it might be.
They generally didn't hunt as much, so they gathered more. But then it's hard to get protein from what you gather rather than what you hunt. So for survival, and they use the fat and the skins and everything. So it wasn't just food; it was shelter and fire and all of that kind of stuff. So although we don't necessarily need a man for those physical things now, it's a very strong survival wiring in the brain. And so what we have, in the cave, we lived nomadically. So often the men would go and hunt and be away for a very long time. Or if they went far enough and they found a cave of the same tribe, they would just stay there and not go back. Why risk your life to travel back for 6 weeks?
Right.
But over time, a lot of societies in the modern world have asked people to live in unit families. And so we have seen men's brains be rewired.
Really?
Yeah. So relatively recently, like maybe in the last 10 years, research has showed that when you become a dad for the first time, oxytocin rewires your brain so that you're more into bonding and less into the testosterone competitive stuff. Because if you think about it, lions and tigers, they'll eat their own children.
You have to tame that in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But how do you tame it, but also harness it in other ways? You know what I mean? It's like a dance of having drive and testosterone.
Yeah.
I never want to lose that drive, right?
I get this question all the time.
But I also want to be a great loving parent and partner and all these things.
Yeah.
And not let testosterone drive me in doing damaging things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so from about the age of 35, your testosterone will have started dropping significantly already.
Not mine. Let's go.
One's testosterone tends to drop from that age. So when you do become a dad...
It drops after you become a dad?
For the first time. Oxytocin goes up, testosterone drops. You become much more about cuddling and bonding and wanting to stay in the home and look after the mum and the baby.
Less about lifting and hunting, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
If you keep lifting, then you would actually keep your testosterone levels higher. Also, if the baby sleeps in the same room as you, then your testosterone levels drop even more.
Come on.
So you might want to move out for 3 months to a different bedroom.
Yeah. I've already told her I'm getting my sleep, the first few months. So your testosterone drops
if you sleep in the same room as the baby.
Why is that?
Because the oxytocin's becoming higher and higher, because you've got this cute little warm thing that smells so nice and is so vulnerable and dependent on you, and it's in the room with you the whole 8 hours, just oxytocin boost.
But are women attracted to men with less testosterone?
They are when they're not fertile, but they are not when they are at peak fertility.
Really?
So mid-cycle, when you're ovulating, you're going to want a bad boy. And the rest of the time, you're going to want a nice man that will stay at home and help you look after the baby.
So if you're not a bad boy when you're at peak fertility as a woman, is that going to hurt the relationship if you don't give women what they want?
Hang on, say that again.
So if a man is not a
bad boy,
boy,
yeah.
when a woman is at peak fertility and the man just wants to cuddle and chill and not be driven by testosterone and give the woman that testosterone feel, will that ultimately hurt the relationship long term if the woman doesn't get what she wants sexually?
I mean, I think if she's chosen him by then. So this is more about when you're like in the choosing phase. Once you've settled down with someone, then you have like a logical conversation about, are we trying for a baby or not, right?
But logic and emotion are two different things.
No, I mean,
in relationships, you might logically say, okay, I'm safe, but emotionally you want something else.
This is a reason that people cheat.
Right, because they're not getting what they want sexually.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you suppress the thing you want sexually to be like, oh, but he's such a good guy, or he's this, but if he's not giving me what I want, then I'm going to go find it from this other younger testosterone-driven man, right?
You're getting really jealous here.
I'm not getting jealous.
This fantasy younger high testosterone man.
Well, I'm just thinking, is this what women deal with?
I know.
Is this what women deal with?
Yeah, to some extent, more consciously or less consciously, depending on the woman.
Yeah. It's interesting, right?
So let me kind of explain the physiology behind it from the research that we know the best, which is in prairie voles. So there are two types of voles in America. Marsh or mountain voles.
Voles? What's a vole?
Vole, it's a little rat-like creature.
Prairie dogs?
No.
Not prairie dogs.
It's a vole. It's more like a mouse or a rat.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The ones that live in the marsh or the mountain, they have plenty of food and plenty of shelter, and they're super promiscuous. The ones that moved to the prairie, where there's like scarce food and shelter, they snuggle in and settle down and become monogamous for life.
The same rat, the same mouse, but just living in different areas.
Yeah.
Come on. So wait, you tell me rats are monogamous?
These voles. These voles are monogamous. The voles are monogamous.
If they live in the prairie.
If they live in the prairie, but not if they live in the marsh.
But if they have all the food and abundance, they're just...
And lots of female voles that they can go and visit.
They're just little polyamorous voles.
Yeah,
huh? Just...
because they know that if they get one vole pregnant and she's left on her own to look after her young, they're going to survive because they're well sheltered. There's plenty of food for her to nip out and bring it back to the babies. Yeah, but in the prairie, if he was promiscuous, then the chances of his offspring dying are quite high because she can't defend the nest herself. She can't find enough food for herself and them without help. And so let's extrapolate this. How does this help humans, right? Okay.
Well, which mice are happier? The ones that are more promiscuous or the ones that are coupled?
I think it depends on the vole.
So you think the female mice are happy if they just, are pregnant, but then their partner just leaves?
No.
They're not happy?
No.
How do we know? Can we test that? Okay, so how do we apply this to our lives?
Hang on, there is an answer to that.
Okay.
We test it through levels of oxytocin and vasopressin.
Come on, have we done this? Have people done this?
Yes.
No way. From these mice?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And actually, just to be serious, the research has done more to help with loneliness, grief, and heartbreak. But obviously, it's got implications for dating.
Wow.
So because one of the things that we saw with the receptors in the brain is that, like, if I'm in... No, it's got to be the other way around. If you're in love with me, you've got more vasopressin receptors in your nucleus accumbens, which is on the reward circuitry. And then every time you see me, you get a reward. And the longer that we've been dating and stay together and become closer, that reward becomes more intense every time you see me. However, if we then had a prolonged separation, time can downregulate the effect of those receptors. So obviously there are implications for that in a breakup or grief, right?
Right.
But one of the things I think is like so important for dating is that if a couple are getting to know each other, and this is all on like heterosexual couples, the research, then as a woman is sexually interested and liking the guy and enjoying the dating, her oxytocin levels is like slowly starting to go up. When they start actually having sex, she's going to be releasing higher levels of oxytocin every time she orgasms, and that's going to make her bond to the guy much more. If you have sex on the first date, the guy's vasopressin levels will plummet straight away, and all he'll be interested in is testosterone. If you make him wait, his vasopressin and oxytocin levels go up, and then when you do actually have sex, he's already bonded, so it's more likely to become part of a loving relationship.
Wow. So if a woman sleeps with a man on the first date or two, is a man driven to want to bond long-term with that person? No. Why not?
Because the vasopressin levels drop as soon as he has sex.
What does that mean?
So vasopressin is the one that makes the prairie voles monogamous. The higher the levels of that, and that the receptors appear in the reward circuitry of your brain. And so basically, if you see your partner in distress, it affects your brain, those neurons, and you want to comfort her through physical touch. So that's oxytocin. But if you haven't had time for those receptors to appear in the correct place to make you bond, then it's just it goes back to lust. So what I say about love and relationships is that the genetics and the receptors will load the gun, but sexual activity will pull the trigger.
So based on neuroscience, if you sleep with someone quickly, you're less likely to bond long-term together. You're more likely to be promiscuous or just not be as interested in that person long-term. Is that right? That's fascinating.
I know.
But you hear a lot of people just be like, just sleep with them on the first day. It's fun. Just have fun. It's all good. But I just feel like you're setting yourself up for letdown.
But if that's what you want, that's fine. But I think
don't expect the guy to keep liking you after that.
No. And don't say it's fine and it's fun if you actually want a long-term relationship, and then be disappointed that they didn't want that too.
Yeah. So the brain chemistry within a man changes if they have sex earlier with a woman.
And it changes in a different way if they wait and they actually create a bond and then
first, and then have sex.
Yeah.
What changes within a woman when they have sex with a man? Do they become more bonded to the person?
Yeah, so for the woman, it's not so much to do with whether they are already in love with the person or not. If they're having sex and they're releasing oxytocin, because we don't have as much testosterone as you. You've got at least 7 to 8 times as much testosterone as me. And that buffers the effect of oxytocin, whereas I would get the full effect of oxytocin.
That's fascinating. So a woman, when they have sex with a man, they're bonding quicker.
Yeah.
But when a man has sex with a woman, he's not necessarily bonding right away. He has to have more time connecting with her until he bonds.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
And then the oxytocin isn't as buffered by the testosterone. So when you've got the vasopressin and the oxytocin high, then the testosterone has less negating effect on it.
This is fascinating. Okay. What else about neuroscience and relationships should we address, since we're on this topic, that you think is really interesting?
So I think, the whole visual and smell thing at the start is quite interesting. And then the receptors and hormones to do with bonding and sex is really interesting. I would say that because we live so much longer now, we're using these cave analogies, but to be honest, in cave times, you and I would both be dead.
Die at 30, yeah.
So relationships potentially have to last for longer. And I think there's 2 things to say here. One is that you can use neuroplasticity to keep growing and changing in a way that keeps a relationship fresh. If you are holding on to this fantasy that a relationship has to last forever, even if we're now living till we're 100, right? So I think another way to look at it is about being in the present, not necessarily putting this intense pressure on yourself, your partner, and the relationship that it has to last forever.
Yeah.
understanding that even if a relationship breaks down, and that's obviously difficult to handle at the time, that there are potential possibilities for something that's more right for you at a different age than maybe a choice you made in your 20s. So, nothing, you don't have to be a neuroscientist to say those two things. It's kind of like just using your brain to understand that there's a certain amount of time. There are, benefits to being in long-lasting relationships, but there are possible alternatives as well.
Yeah.